Hello, welcome. Today is the final day of January, the 31st day as it heads into February. Let's take a look at Bitcoin, a little bit on the daily chart, but primarily on the monthly chart, which was shown on the thumbnail of this video, looking back at the last few years. Therefore, within this daily chart, which has encountered this bull market, broke out large on this resistance field, gave back all of its gains, and has since been rallying, and has now made a move to this 950 level on the BTC-e exchange. And what's this going to work out as? A level of resistance? Is it going to do this type of correcting through time movement that it's done before in the past? Is it going to break this level? Will we find support? And those are all questions because I don't know the answers to such, but I do realize that if it sells off, there's a pretty good chance resist or support will be found where resistance was once met. If it has a decent move, maybe up to 975 to 1,000, that any pullbacks, I'd be now first looking for this level to be support. And then, of course, resistance fields. You got the psychology 1,000 number, then the 1,100 previous highs towards the upside. So now let's take a look at this monthly chart, which dates back to January of 2013. And I want to talk about this within sections. The first section, and here, this is 4 months up in a row, and 4 massive big months up in a row. Markets can correct either through price or through time. This is 5 months correcting through time, followed by 2 extreme months, finished off within the final one being the main event, a big play. Followed through with what turned out to be 14 consecutive months going down. Then once again, after a price correction, it was then reverted to a time correction with 8 sideways movements, 9 if you count the one afterwards, but I'm counting this as the next up movement, which has not been, that's still a play intact. January would have made this at least the 16th consecutive one within this up movement. So this works out to 4 up, 5 sideways, 2 up, 14 down, 8 sideways, and 16 and counting right now on the upside. What's going to change this trend? Well, either a sideways movement would do it, or a downwards movement, or a much larger rate of ascent, aka this one in here. So that's only, so the trend's got to either continue or do one of those things, and trying to be the earliest in determining what the next one happens to be can give you one, get you one step ahead on how, of course, that market movements work out. And when you look at these charts, when you reach a previous resistance level, the more often that you test it, the more likely it is that you take it out. And if you go sideways for a while, then that strengthens the probability on the eventual breakout. I'm going to take a look at the chart just from this period on and increase the scaling. So I'm going to do that now. And there we have it. Now we can see things just a little bit easier. And we can notice that this gain, well, before we do that, I'm going to go back to the last one. This first rise higher worked out to be really 20 times gain when you consider what this low is and what this high happens to be. And this gain, when you consider it's well under 100 and it's 1,100, well, that's about 13 times. And this, of course, occurring in 2 months. this loss, if it's going from 1100, we can look at this more on the next chart, but if it goes from 1100 down to about 170, that you can say that's about a 7.5x. You're just taking high divided by low to get that number. And then of course 170 to this one, well actually you'd be starting it up on here. This gain, because the breakout really, although one could say the breakout could occur here too, although not much, this is really sideways. So no, this gain would go from like 230 to 1100. That's a gain of about 5x or so on the last one. So notice that this is a situation where it's taken 16 months, a little over 5 quarters, to make that gain. That took less than 1 month to make in November of 2013. So just some interesting points to go over. Again, I think it's important to understand how this trend line is going to play through, because when it breaks, it can start with the violent movement if it's not going to break to a sideways action. So if it either breaks to the downside for a price correction or a correction via price, then you can watch out for a big red candle to start it. And if it's a change in trend with a higher rate of ascent, then these big green candles would then also be what's needed to make such an event take place. Thank you for tuning in and have yourself a great day. Bye-bye.